This will be the first video in a series where I'm installing a trolling motor on the bow of my center console boat. Step one is to clear the space where the motor is going to mount, and you can see that there's a navigation light there that I need to replace with a different type of model. I really like the clean look of these Taco rub rail navigation lights, and there's plenty of install videos out on YouTube, but I couldn't find any single video that shows you how to lay them out and measure for their exact location to mount on your boat. So that's what we're going to go through today. Alright, the tools you're going to need for this job are obviously the template from Taco. You're going to want some tape. This is just vinyl tape, kind of like electrical tape. You could also use painter's tape, that's fine. I got a pencil, I got a Sharpie, tape measure, very critical. Straight edge, or you could even use some mason's cord, or even just draw a straight line. I'd found it easier to use tape a straight edge to my center line. I have a center punch here, a hammer, and obviously the template that I fabricated. Here's the instructions that came with my kit. They explain in theory where you're supposed to mount these, but not in practice and how you're specifically supposed to measure. So the beams of light are supposed to face forward and be parallel with the center line of your boat. And then they, as per Coast Guard regulation rule 21, the light is supposed to shine in a 112.5 degree arc towards the aft of the boat. So that sounds reasonable enough, but they really don't give any instructions on how to measure this arc or the exact placement on your hull. So these are the instructions that came with my unit, the F386602 rub rail lights. Found this set of instructions that came with the F386800C2 model, and they have a similar diagram, but when I was looking at it, I thought that this may be more useful to help build a template. Took this diagram, put it on the photocopier, and enlarged it to get this larger version. And from here, see, we have, this would be the rub rail of the boat, the tangent line, and this is the edge of the forward edge of the beam and the rear edge of the beam. And what I've done here is just folded it, and this could be used to measure alongside the rub rail of the boat, but it would be difficult to get measurements and make this accurate. So what I've done is taken, this was a scrap piece of wood I had laying around, but you need to make sure the edges are straight, because that will end up being the edge of the beam that you need to measure off of to the center line of the boat. So I'll go back to one of these diagrams, showed it a little more clearly. So you're going to find center line of your boat, and you need to measure from the edge of the beam in and make sure that that beam of light is parallel to the center line of the boat. So this board needs to represent the edge of the beam, and you need to make sure this is true. I did that in my table saw. So I ran this through the table saw and got this edge as straight as you possibly can. And I did both edges, ran it through twice on both sides to make sure both edges were true. Okay, your next step is to take your paper template that we got that we enlarged from the Taco instructions, and I've actually put a couple creases into it. This one represents the tangent line, or the rub rail itself. They're calling it the tangent line. And then the other two lines on here are the edges of the beam. Depending on if you're port or starboard, one's going to be the forward edge, one's going to be the rear edge. And I'm lining up the edge of the board with the line that says edge of the beam. And I'm going to use my straight edge, and I'm going to transfer the rub rail line, or what they call the tangent line, onto the board. And then I do the same thing for this side. I line up that beam, the edge of the board. Obviously I already did this, so I'm just kind of transfer my tangent line. You can see the lines that I drew to lay out what they're calling the tangent line, or where the rub rail would be, whether it's port or starboard. This is going to rest on my gunnel. The only thing that would make this a little easier, I had a board that I could bolt in along that line so it would rest up against the rub rail while I try to take my measurements. And so I've taken this scrap piece of Luan, bolted it in, and I have 2 bolt holes for port and starboard, so I could switch it back and forth depending on which side I'm going to measure. Okay, I found my center line up near where my template's going to go, and don't trust hardware locations. I got real lucky that this rail stanchion, it happens to be dead center, and that light is mounted dead center. I suspect they have a template that they pop these, pop the holes in, but I would not assume that to be correct. It took me quite a while of taking measurements to feel comfortable that this indeed was a center line. I've taped a straight edge down there just so it'll be easier for me. I'm sitting here by myself. Easier for me to take a measurement from the edge, from the center line out to my template. That forward cleat was in my way, so I had to put a spacer underneath the board. You should come prepared with some different size hunks of wood to put under your board if you're doing the same method. Actually, 23 5/8. 23 9/16. I'm a 16th off. That's pretty darn good. Not good enough for me though. I'm now very happy that this line here, this inside edge of the board, is parallel with the center line of the boat, and that represents the beam of light going straight ahead from my nav lights. Now the only thing I need to do is mark it. You can see this. I cut this groove on the table saw so that I could get a pencil line right through to the stainless rail, but it turns out I forgot to put tape on it, and pencil doesn't really work well on stainless, so I just made a mark in the vinyl portion of the rub rail just above it, and in a minute I'll transfer that to the stainless rail itself. Okay, I've marked my rail. Last thing I'm going to do is put a center punch on it. Okay, you can see I flipped the template over for the port side. And I'm going to take the same measurements to my center line. Looking for the same number. Okay, I'm going to mark the rail here. Here I'm double checking everything by measuring from my center line to each location that I marked for the light, and obviously you want these to be the same exact measurement, and mine were. What I forgot to show here was I actually checked inside the anchor locker to make sure this location was going to be okay to drill and mount these lights. But before you use a center punch on your railing, or definitely before you drill a hole, you want to check inside to make sure it's a safe spot to mount these lights. If you subscribe to my channel, you'll get a notification on my next video where I install these rubber lights onto the boat. Thanks for watching, and tight lines to all.